Hi, this is a story called School Days Aren't the Happiest Days of Our Lives. School tennis played a small part in my career during the early days, but there are few, if any, good memories for me now, and this was partly my own fault. I spoke in an earlier story of the perception at the time anyway, of tennis being regarded as an elitist sport. But here was I having private lessons for the princely sum of £1 per hour, entering tennis tournaments and owning not one, but two Dunlop Max by Fort rackets at a cost of over £6 each. I didn't dare to mention this to any of my school pals, as I didn't want them to think I was getting above my station. I hid my tennis ability at school by turning up for lessons with an old Slashing Royal Crown racket costing £3 and 5 shillings, which would equate to £3.25 in today's money, and then by playing deliberately badly during the lessons. I used none of the cultured stroke play I had learned under the guidance of Lionel Bradford at Roding Valley. The problem was, though, that I was a natural competitor and I had been entered into the Waltham Forest Schoolboys Singles Tournament in the summer of 1969. As far as I knew, nobody else in the district could actually play the game to any standard, so surely there was to be only one winner. That would be me then. I duly reached the semi-final, which was to be played 2 days before the final, and this meant that the finals day programme had to be printed before our match was even played. My best friend at that time was Tony Marsh, and he pointed out to me that my name was nowhere to be seen in that programme. Our maths and PE teacher was organising this tournament and had put the other boys' names straight into the final, giving no consideration to the fact that I might actually win the semi-final. I was angry and also confused, as I was made to feel as if I didn't exist. I was a shy boy at that time and chose not to tell my parents about this, as I didn't want to cause a problem at school. I did, however, have a sneaky look at my opponent on the practice course before we played. He had a powder puff second serve and no real backhand. The chances of this lad beating me in a 3-set tennis match in the summer of 1969 were approximately 0, yet our teacher had him nailed on as the winner. This did, however, give me an opportunity that any schoolboy would have loved. I had the chance to teach my own teacher a lesson he wouldn't easily forget, whilst making a fool of him at the same time. This was an opportunity that I wasn't about to turn down. The match was an utter fiasco from start to finish. Most people see tennis as it is played at Wimbledon with ball boys and umpires, etc. But in amateur tennis there are neither, with players making their own line calls. I walked off court in disgust at set point to me at 5-3 in the first set after receiving the most ridiculous of a string of bad line calls. Dad was watching and told me to come off. We drove back to school to talk to the teacher, the very same man who didn't seem to know of my existence. Deep joy. Our teacher was completely unsympathetic and began moaning about getting the match played in time. We didn't know this at the time, but he was entitled to have disqualified me for walking off the court. But the teacher himself was hardly likely to have known this either. Inexplicably, he went back to the classroom to get the finals day programme. I guess he did this to emphasise just how busy he was, but he must have completely forgotten what was written in there, or to be more precise, what wasn't written in there. I remember waiting for him to return, thinking to myself, this is going to be good. The teacher opened the programme and was in mid-sentence when Dad said to him, "Where's Michael's name? Where's Michael's name in that programme?" The penny suddenly dropped and he sheepishly replied, "Ah," before looking my father straight in the eye and saying to him, "This was written in anticipation of the other lad beating your son." It was lunchtime and by this time a small crowd had gathered around us. Amazingly, all of my mates had suddenly suffered flat tyres to their bikes at exactly the same time and all within earshot of the furore. My dad had a temper for sure, and he slung my tennis bag to the floor in anger. It's the closest I ever saw to him really losing it. He later admitted to me that he was within an inch of actually laying one on him. Had he done so, I'd have been a legend at that school, but thankfully he held back. The match was concluded the next day, and I went on to win it by a score of 10-8, 6-2. There were no tie breaks in 1969, but this was still a ridiculous scoreline considering our respective standards of play, as indeed was the final, which I won, 1-6, 6-3, 6-1. I went walkabout in the first set of that final, and Dad was going mental on the sidelines. I think I was deeply affected by the issues surrounding my first singles title. A teacher who I was supposed to have respected had behaved in a manner which was clearly beyond the pale, and consequently I didn't really want to be there. I pulled myself together just in time, however, and in that final set, I think I played properly for the first ever time at school. This should, of course, have been a great moment for me then, and a wonderful memory for me now. It was neither, but the only consolation was that the previously shy 15-year-old boy with few friends spent his last year at school as Mr. Popular. Cheers, Dad. Even my mates thought you were a legend.